look back at the weeks leading up to the 2016 referendum. The Take Back Control show in London features a collection of newspaper headlines and campaign materials ahead of the vote, as well as artwork inspired by the result.
I hope that coming through the Take Back Control show, you can remember, oh yeah, that happened, or maybe that didn't happen. And you can reflect on what people were telling you at the time, and you can take back your own control.
British Prime Minister Theresa May is also trying to take back control of Brexit. She's asked the EU to delay the UK's departure until the end of June. That's after twice failing to get her deal passed in Parliament.
The government intends to bring forward proposals for a third meaningful vote. If that vote is passed, the extension will give the House time to consider the withdrawal agreement bill. If not, the House will have to decide how to proceed. But as Prime Minister, I am not prepared to delay Brexit any further than the 30th of June.
A delay would save the UK from crashing out without a deal on March the 29th and would need the approval of all 27 EU leaders. May will address them on Thursday to sell her proposal, but there's no guarantee they'll buy it.
At this point, I can't speculate about my decision on Thursday because it all depends on what Theresa May will put forward, what the situation is, and what will happen in Parliament.
A defeat in Brussels raises the likelihood of a disruptive divorce that would stunt the UK economy. The Bank of England says GDP could contract by as much as 8%. British lawmakers rejected a no-deal exit last week, but that vote wasn't binding. So unless they can agree on a way forward in the coming days, a no-deal Brexit is what they'll get. Paolo Montecillo, TRT World.
Well, for more on Brexit, let's bring in Chris Roebuck, a professor from Cass Business School in London. Thank you very much for being with us, Chris. So a word that's been synonymous with Brexit is uncertainty, and we've seen plenty more of that today. What do you make of what's happened?
OK, if we take the politics out of this and we look at what's happened over the last 2 years from the leadership perspective, it's really interesting. Leaders can lead in two ways. Either they can say, this is my plan, you accept the plan or you don't. Or they say, we can talk, we can create a plan that's based on consensus. In terms of all the evidence is that seeking consensus is more likely to deliver success than telling people what's going to happen, particularly if there is more than one option. What Theresa May has done is she has taken that course of action, which is not the best course of action in terms of leadership success, for 2 years. It was not unsurprising that when she presented her deal based on it's my deal or no deal, it was rejected. Then she presented the same deal again, and it was rejected. Any sensible leader would have worked out after the second time it was probably the time to consult some people across the Houses of Parliament and not even think about putting your own deal again. And to some degree, some might say that at some point, determination does become a little like arrogance.
But it looks like she's going to put the same deal again next week. This is the latest that we're seeing.
Indeed.
How much is this uncertainty affecting businesses and the economy?
I think it's now got to the point where everybody is just looking at the Houses of Parliament and saying, how on earth did we get to this position? From the perspective of people in business, it is causing them to be seriously concerned about what's going to happen if there's a no deal. They're actually confused about what's going on, so they're withholding investment and that sort of thing. But it's also affecting people who have jobs. They are worried about what might happen to their business if there is a no deal, if there is a retraction in GDP, etc. I think the fundamental question at this point is Theresa May and the government going to be prepared to build a consensus across the entire Parliament rather than trying not to do that to maintain the integrity of her own party?
And what, in your view, would be the best and the worst case scenarios that we could hope for at this point?
The worst case scenario is clearly a no deal, because obviously the economic damage would be colossal to the UK economy and to the whole country. And it isn't just about businesses, it's about tax revenues, which then means you've got less money for hospitals, less money for schools in the future years. I believe the best option, if you look at what good leadership says you should do, is for Theresa May to turn around and go across the House of Commons and build a consensus across all parties to find a solution that everyone can support, even if that upsets some of her own people. That's the difference between politics and leadership and statesmanship.
Some companies have cited Brexit as a reason for moving out of the UK, but then others have suggested they will continue to invest or bring in new investment. So perhaps not all doom and gloom.
Not all doom and gloom. It depends what market you're in. It depends. So, for example, if the EU is your major market, then there is a logic to say we need to move towards the EU as much as possible. If the EU is not your major market could be USA, China, Middle East or wherever. Therefore, the pull towards the EU is not as significant in terms of your profitability. So I think what you're seeing is you're seeing that play out in terms of the degree to which various organisations are either jumping and saying we have to leave to stay close to the EU and moved into the EU, or we don't really care because the EU is not, in our terms, a significant revenue generator.
OK, Chris Roebuck from Cass Business School in London, thank you very much indeed for your insight.